All right. Hello, everybody. It's the Meister from Brews and Tunes. I am here today. Very excited about this. I am talking with seminal death metal guitarist Alex Bouks from y'all probably know him from Immolation, Incantation. You've been in Ruinous. You've got some new bands coming up too, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. And then, of course, Goreaphobia. How can you forget that? So, great band. So anyway, thank you so much, Alex, for joining me. Really excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, why don't we start? Where do we start? Why don't we start with? We'll talk a little bit about. How about talk about Immolation? You joined the band a few years back. I guess more than a few years now.
5 years now.
Okay. How did that come about? How was did you approach them? Did they approach you?
No, they approached me. Those guys. I mean, Bob and Ross are two of my best friends for forever. Since we were kids, teenagers. So it was just it was kind of funny how it happened. Was just on a normal phone call with me and Ross, because we would always kind of talk like every week or once a week for forever, And so I think we had like a 2-hour conversation that day, and it was at the end of the conversation, and he was just kind of like, "Oh, one more thing before you go. What would you think about joining the band?" I'm just like, "What?" So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me, because I got to join, be in a band with my best buds, and Steve included. And I've always been a fan of the band and stuff like that. But I mean, long story short, it was just Bill Taylor, who was the guitar player for, I guess Bill was in the band maybe like 16 years, something like that. And Bill's still a good friend of all of ours. He had a lot of personal stuff going on in his life, and they knew he was going to leave for a while, so it was kind of, planned out, I guess, that I would come into the fold. But it was a no-brainer for me to join the band, because, like I said, really good friends of mine, family, they're brothers of mine, and and also musically, it's really up my alley, and 5 years later, here we still are, and we're getting ready to start rehearsing to record the next record.
Excellent. That was going to be my next question. If there was something in the works right now, with especially with the downtime.
I mean, we have a lot of stuff. I mean, we have 12 songs for a new record, and as of recently, we're even coming up with stuff for another record. So the plan is that, obviously you want to utilize the time that we're home, because, I haven't been home like this in, I don't know when, maybe like 12 years or something. This is the longest I've been home. And so, we want to utilize the time and get this record done. And then, by the time we go out on tour again, we'll have another record ready. So we do that touring cycle, then we come home and record the next record. So kind of try to get ahead of the game, I know even Incantation doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like they're working on a new record right now.
Cool. That's
so,
very cool. With speaking of writing the new record, what is that process like? And is it different now with COVID than it was before? Is it a collaborative method for you guys?
Not really. I mean, nothing's really changed. I mean, Bob is he writes the music for Immolation. As of recently, I do have contributed, some of my stuff too. So you'll hear some of my ideas as well. But for the most part, Bob, he's the main songwriter, and he will, write the songs. Ross is the main lyricist, but Bob does contribute lyrics as well, especially for the last couple records. He's actually had ideas and stuff like that.
Nice.
And for the most part, Bob will write the songs, do pre-production, send it to everybody, and everybody meets in the studio. But this time around, we're going to do things differently. We're going to, jam on the songs as a band before we go into the studio and really kind of just feel out everything and perfect the songs the best we can, you know, because it's probably been like almost 20 years since Immolation's done that, anything like that, you know, as far as like rehearsing as a band before. It's usually
really?
like Bob writes, you know, the music and everybody meets in the studio to record them, you know, just do your homework at home. And, you know, so this time we would kind of want to, you know, really shape the songs and also get more of a kind of like a, you know, jammy vibe of the as a band playing together.
Right.
Because, you know, when you do a record and you go in the studio, then you go right out on tour, and it's just like you're playing those songs kind of the first time as a band, and over time you kind of, you know, the songs start to gel more, you know. So we're gonna, you know, go back to the old ways of doing things and you know, practice as a band, you know. And, you know, it's worked for a while, but I think this is the best way of doing things, you know, to really bring out that human factor of playing, I think, on the record, which
Nice.
that's the plan, at least for the new one.
Very cool. Whoa. Sorry. My computer just kind of hiccuped. You just for a second there. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea of yeah. I was gonna when you mentioned the idea of rehearsing together, and I was, you know, kind of got my head thinking around the lines of, yeah, that kind of trying to capture more of a live element to your sound, because that's the thing is, I mean, unfortunately, sadly, I've never actually seen Immolation live, but I've watched a lot of footage, and you guys are so tight. I mean, you're all obviously professionals, you know what you're doing, but there's a really tight cohesiveness to that band. I was watching a video just not too long ago. I think it might have been Bloodstock. I'm not sure. But yeah, you guys are you're really tight. You have a lot of energy to watch. And that's actually a question I kind of have is, hopefully this doesn't sound too weird, but with Bob, he's a very animated guitar player. Have you ever gotten distracted on stage? You know, do you have to not watch him play?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because back in the day, Bob he really didn't move at all, really, except for like some headbanging. So what happened was he cut all his hair off, and he was just like, well, I got to figure something else out here. I can't headbang anymore. I have no hair. So I guess it was just kind of a natural evolution of, you know, of his stage presence, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, nothing. It's not like a show or anything. It's
right. Yeah.
Just naturally how he feels when he plays, and you know, my stage presence has been pretty mellow the last few years because I've had some physical problems and stuff. So my headbanging days are over. So maybe I need to come up with something new. But yeah, it's yeah. There's sometimes, you know, like you know, I'll be playing and all of a sudden Bob's over here on my side of the stage and he's swinging the guitar around and stuff. And so you gotta watch out you don't get stabbed by his guitar headstock.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I have to say, you know, I've been playing music for I don't know 35, 36 years or whatever, and you know, of all the bands that I've been in, this is like without a doubt the tightest band that I've been in. And, you know, because you were talking about being tight and stuff like that. And, you know, I think a lot of it's just we have a real good chemistry, you know, and Bob, as a guitar player, you know, obviously there's differences in our styles, but we're very similar in a lot of ways. So, you know, when I came into the band and joined the band and was learning the songs, it just felt like I was playing my own stuff. You know, it's just real natural thing. And, you know, so like I said, there's a real good chemistry between all of us. And, you know, every time I go out on stage with the other three guys, you know, I never feel like, oh man, is one of them going to shit the bed tonight on stage or something like that, you know? And like, in fact, we all did a interview last night, and talking about Steve, and Steve is just one of those drummers because I've been through performances where you have a drummer that really is not doing his homework, or he just flies off the handle, and the drummer is the guy that holds the whole thing together.
Right.
And Steve, he always gives it his 110% every night he goes on stage, and that goes for all of us. I mean, you got to have integrity in what you do. We're not competitive with any other bands or anything like that. We're just competitive with ourselves, and we want to give it our best every night, and you want to give the audience their money's worth every night, because nothing worse than a fan, including myself. When I'm a huge fan of music, and if I go out and see Tony Iommi slacking on the guitar one night, I'm going to be pretty disappointed, or Richie Blackmore, the guys I grew up with. It's like or Iron Maiden or whatever. It's you want to see them do their best, and you want to be, and you want to give them their money's worth, every night, no matter how many people are there every night. And, the four of us have, integrity in what we do. We want to be the best at what we're doing, and just, go out there every night and give it to them. If you can't, then you shouldn't be doing it anymore. Sit at home,
Good point. Yeah, and I would say, I mean, again, I haven't seen the band live, but the performances I've seen on YouTube and other videos, it's been incredible. And Atonement is just a really phenomenal album from start to finish. Since that's come out, I've listened to it so many times. Just, it's one of those, and there are even times I'll listen to it and then flip it right back over and start over again. It's like, oh man, there's so much cool stuff going on there.
It's crazy, this far into the game, that like Atonement coming out, and it's probably one of the most successful records in the band's career.
Yeah.
And it's great, and I think what it is that we're probably more inspired now than ever. Like, I enjoy things a lot more than I did when I was a kid. When you're a kid, you're just kind of your ego, and you're competing, and you're very competitive, and there's none of those things anymore. It's just about the music, and just being the best we can be, and enjoying the moment. And I think that shows, that we're really passionate about what we're doing, especially even more so nowadays, more than ever. We appreciate getting together, and we want to make, every time you do a record, you want to try and outdo what you did the last time. For me, that's what it's about. It's just to continuously try to keep pushing forward when you're writing new music. And because, most importantly, you want to satisfy yourself. And if, the people like it, then that's, obviously it's an added bonus, to everything. But I'm glad you like Atonement, because that's, it's nothing to do with me joining the band or anything, but for me, that's my favorite record of the band. And my history with Immolation goes back to even before Immolation, when there was Rigor Mortis. So besides them being my friends, I was always a fan of the band. And I just think that Bob, as a songwriter, he's continuously gotten better, at crafting songs and things. And I think Atonement there's no filler on there. It's all great songs. And but that's just my opinion. That doesn't mean anything either, but as long as people like it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there's definitely no filler. It's a solid album all the way through. And yeah, I would say one of, if not their strongest album. It's so good.
Yeah.
You talked about progressing forward with music. So let's talk a little bit about, you've been really busy this past year. You've got two side projects, or I don't know if they're side, but you have two projects going.
Yeah.
Shadows and the newer project, Plague of Tyranny, which you guys just released a song this past week, which is a killer song. If I remember the name correctly, Eyes of the Snake, right? Is that,
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, Eyes of the Snake, killer song. And
Thank you.
why don't you tell us a little bit about that band? And that's, it's kind of kind of a death metal supergroup in a way. You've got some heavy hitters on that album.
Yeah.
Well, becoming a
yeah. Originally, how it came about was me and Jim Rowe. Jim Rowe's the original Incantation drummer. He played in Goreaphobia with me, and he's he's one of my close friends, and he's also I've always been a big fan of his playing as a drummer. He's always been one of my favorite drummers. So me and him haven't worked together on an album since 2011, which was the last Goreaphobia record. So, just reconnected with Jim. That was just like, yeah, we got to do something, and he actually, he sessions one song on the new Shadows full-length album that we got coming out too. So that was kind of like the beginning of that. And then it was just like, yeah, we got to do our own thing, play some death metal, and so basically that song, I wrote the music for that song many years ago. It's probably like 12 years old, actually, the music for that song. But,
oh, really?
Yeah, but that was just one of the songs that I sent first. Like, I think this is a good tune. Miles will use it. It's been sitting around forever. So I sent that to Jimmy. He did the drums, and then we got Chuck, who's the bassist of Incantation, another super, close friend of mine. And it's just like, yeah, you know what? Why don't we get Chuck? And then the last person was Paul Speckman, who's another good friend of mine, and I'm a big fan of Paul's music, and he was a big inspiration on a lot of us that were in the 80s and the early death metal scene. Like, Paul's a part of kind of pushing extreme music to the next level, because if you were a kid hearing the Deathstrike demo that came out in 1985, that was just like light years ahead, the attitude and the extreme, sound of that band, so I don't think a lot of people, maybe people do know, but a lot of people don't know, Paul is one of the guys that, he's up there with Tom Warrior and, all these other guys that kind of helped push heavy, dark, extreme music, to the next level. So, yeah, I just kind of reached out to Paul. So, would you be into doing this? And of course, he was immediately on board. And so right now I wrote the rest of the album as of recently. So we only recorded that one song, but we're going to get in the studio and record a full length, so all brand new stuff. Like that song is, like I said, is really old. But Paul, he went in the studio, he wrote the lyrics real quick, went in the studio in like 3 days, and it's just, Paul's a professional. He's and every day I hear from him where it's just like, come on, let's get this thing going, and
nice.
And at his age, I think Paul's probably around maybe 57 now, something like that. And it's just like he's better than ever, and he's more gung ho, and it's all about getting out there and doing stuff and making things happen. And and he's a hard worker, like I am. I work really hard at what I do, and maybe a lot of other areas of my life I don't have that same enthusiasm, but with music I do, that's for sure. So yeah, we're really excited about this. I'm really confident in the music we have, ready for a full life. I think people will dig it, especially like a lot of the old school people and stuff will appreciate us getting together, and I think it kind of makes something kind of cool, like with my music and Paul's vocals and his lyrics. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
combination. So
what I've heard so far is excellent. So I'm really excited to see what comes.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you foresee? I mean, I know it's early at this point in the game, but with as things start getting better in the country with the pandemic, do you foresee that Plague of Tyranny would do live shows?
Sure, definitely. Okay. Yeah. I mean, Immolation, once we are booked to tour starting next year. I don't want to give any dates or anything like that.
Right.
We have stuff already in the works, but yeah, in between there, when I'm able to do it, I would like to do maybe some festivals or whatever. And the same thing with my other project, Shadows, which is not death metal by any means.
Right, yeah.
that's another thing that I'm really passionate about. And fortunately, because of the pandemic, I had the time to do all this stuff, because probably, I might have never done these records, if I wasn't stuck at home, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because I love being at home. But I do, I didn't plan on being at home this long, I was looking forward to a break, and didn't expect this, but like anybody, nobody expected this, but yeah, it's been really cool to do other stuff that I always wanted to do, play with some friends, some different musical projects that, we always would talk about. Just, even me and Paul, we've talked years about, like, oh, we got to do something. And, so here it is. And now being home, like I said, I just was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen. No excuses,
So a few good things have come out of 2020, at least.
Yeah.
Some really good things.
Very creative year I think for most musicians that have been home. Everybody's just been, my other friends from other, touring bands and stuff that I talk to, and, they tell me the same thing, like, yeah, I've just been writing like crazy. And it's like, everybody's just like, yeah, I got 2 records already written. It's just like, because we're once the floodgates open, it's going to be, a little crazy, But I think people really want to. They're going to probably enjoy things even more so when they go back out. And, the live experience again. Same thing with me. I miss. There was quite a few things that were coming through, and I think the last concert I went to was me and my wife went to see Jeff Beck.
Oh, cool.
That was probably like the last thing I got to see, and and that was just amazing. Just to see a guy at his age just go out there and just destroy. I mean, 76, 70. I don't know how old he is now, but man, he just very inspiring. It's like, if I think I'm old, I mean, come on. He's out there destroying it every night. So I miss going to concerts like a Jeff Beck, or I think Maiden was supposed to come back, and I was looking forward to that because I haven't seen Maiden in like 20 years. So
I've got same thing. We've got, my wife and I, we have tickets to shows that have been postponed. Some were canceled, some were postponed still. We're kind of waiting to find out, hopefully we'll know something soon, but who knows.
I mean, it looks like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which even, hey, humanity's been through all kinds of craziness. We still prevail, and I think sometimes people get stuck in all this doom and gloom stuff, and it's easy to do that, but you gotta stay positive.
Just listen to the doom and gloom stuff, and then that's what I do.
I get that stuff out of my system every day. Just pick up the phone.
Exactly. Will you talk a little bit about Shadows? So it's very different from what you normally do. I mean, in terms of death metal, it's more of a kind of gothic almost, kind of doomy, kind of more atmospheric.
Well, I mean, I think it's just, the thing is about Shadows, it wasn't a conscious thing, like, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to sound like this. So originally it was just me and the original guitar player from Goreaphobia, me and him, Henny Petrowski, just reconnected, just, it was actually me kind of pushing him to play some music again, just any excuse to get him to do something. And so we wrote a song, and I booked studio time at a friend of mine, Lance, who's now a member of the band, his recording studio. We went in and recorded the song, and Henny played me a tape of the vocalists from like 20 years back of us just doing some, random jamming stuff. And I was like, wow, he would fit in perfectly what we're doing here. And so we got him on board, and then, it just happened really quickly. We were just inspired. We were writing songs. And like I said, there was wasn't any kind of conscious decision of what was going to sound like. But I think it's kind of a combination of a lot of influences, that stuff we grew up with, heavy rock, dark rock, new wave music in the 80s and stuff like that. So I think it's, psychedelia, and there's a lot of stuff in there, and it's kind of experimental. We just kind of, obviously the theme is the music's going to be is the darkness in the music, but there's a lot of different elements, kind of experimental stuff that we do, and more kind of hard rock elements, I think. So it's cool. I've noticed like a lot of people are like, oh, doom, gothic doom, everybody's got labels for everything, whatever, that's fine, but I don't look at things that way. I just kind of, we're going to go in and write some songs, and that's what happens when you get these four guys together. It comes out with the sound of shadows, so, and all the music is finished. We have the EP that just came out, and we just finished recording all the music. So right now, our singer is in the studio doing the vocals for the full length record. So
excellent.
hopefully that'll be out, the end of this year. And I'm really, really excited about, especially the full length, because I think it's a leap forward from the EP. It's
nice.
Progressed a lot. We always try to look at, like, you look at Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning or something like that, that right. Progression and things. And no matter what I'm doing, whatever band it is, you're always looking at things, like I was saying like that earlier. You're always trying to outdo what you did before and push things to the next level,
Nice.
So it's been super exciting, it's just been great just to kind of do all this different stuff, and there's been a lot of music that's in me that's just been waiting to get out,
That's great. Yeah.
And when you're touring all the time and stuff like that, you really don't, have that kind of time to do those things when you got a schedule. You come home from the road and you're just like burnt out. You want to spend time with the family and all that kind of stuff. And, so, it's been kind of a blessing to, do the shadows and do Plague of Tyranny.
Yeah.
The name is new.
Okay.
Jim Rowe actually named the band. It's his name. And
nice.
Yeah, so, and I'm excited about that now, because that's more of my thing. It's like my guitar playing or whatever. So I could just be me, all the time. I'm not playing in another band that you have to, not like you have to, but you have to be, be respectful to the sound of the band. It's
right.
Like you could bring yourself in there. It's the same, with Immolation, that you have to treat it with respect. Or when I played in Incantation, same thing. It's just, you have to, go in there and just do your best to, make the band the best it can be, and be respectful to the roots and the sound of the band,
Right.
So,
right.
So
Yeah.
with Plague of Tyranny, it's just, it's my music. So it's just me being me,
Cool.
For the most part, shadows too, most of the stuff. But on the full length, actually, Lance Walter, our guitarist, who plays drums and he did bass on the EP, he wrote 3 songs for the music. So it's cool to have somebody else, contribute that something that you wouldn't normally think of, that I think broadens the band more, with his songwriting, with mine, or Henny's riffs, so.
Well, that EP is really cool. So I'm excited that you've got a full length album coming out.
Yeah. I know for a lot of fans that they know me for what I do. It's not what they wanted, but then there's some people that are just open-minded and curious, and they're like, yeah, this is not what I thought it was, but this is pretty interesting, and because I listen to all kinds of music, so I don't listen to death metal and black metal 24 hours a day, even though I love it. It's in my DNA.
Right. Yeah.
But there's I like strange experimental music and things like that. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and I think it depends on my mood, and I'm always kind of baffled by people that only listen to one style of music and that's it. Like they don't.
Yeah, it's
anything else.
but that's fine. You like what you like, you know, that's
exactly.
okay. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a trip backwards in time a little bit. Well, not a little bit. How about a lot? How did you originally get started in music?
Well, I knew as a kid that I wanted to play music, you know, because my father was on to, you know, like 60s rock and roll and stuff, and there's the Beatles and Hendrix and all that stuff. And so I was immediately attracted to that. And in my grandparents' home, it was classical music. And you know, I'm Russian, so it's like Russian folk music and things like that. So it was like all these different things that I was immediately attracted to music in general, you know. But I think it was when I started kind of getting to the heavy metal, you know, like when that hard rock and heavy metal, like Judas Priest and Maiden and stuff. And actually, I had this conversation last night. It was Judas Priest Unleashed in the East. That was my first Priest record.
Oh, nice.
And you know that, I mean, that album is just, it's one of my favorite records of all time. But the cover of the record was just like, you know, you heard the music and the imagery of the band and just the leather and the spikes and KK Downing with the flying V on the front. And I was just like, I want to do that. You know, I want to be that guy, KK Downing, you know? So I think that's kind of where it started. The spark, you know, then it was just eventually, you know, originally I wanted to play guitar originally, but at school, I remember they didn't have guitar, but they had drum lessons. So I took drum lessons at first. And then I got a guitar, and eventually got a guitar, and you know, just took off with it right away, you know, pretty much. So in I guess '86, you know.
And you formed Goreaphobia. You were just a kid, right? You were like 15, 16?
Yeah. All the guys I played with were all like, it's funny because, you know, I had two uncles in the '70s that got me into hard rock. And, you know, I was already in the Black Sabbath. I saw Black Sabbath, actually. My uncle took me to see Van Halen open for Black Sabbath. I was like, I don't know, 6 years old or some shit like that.
Cool.
You know, that was Ozzy's last tour with Sabbath. It was a Never Say Die tour, I guess. And, yeah, so, you know, I had all this heavy stuff and Sabbath and Rainbow and UFO and all this music. And, but I just kind of, as a little kid, I just kind of discovered things, you know, the heavier stuff, because my uncles started me. And then I just kind of like going to the record store, you know, you see like Judas Priest, you sort of I don't even know if Number of the Beast was out at the time, maybe, or Made in Japan, and, you know, all that stuff. And then I got into like, you know, a friend of mine that I went to school with, it was his uncle, but he was only like a couple of years older than us. But, you know, it was his uncle. And I remember going to his house, and we listened to Kill 'Em All, Merciful Fate, Melissa, and I think it was Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac.
Oh, nice.
And then I heard that, and you know, God, it might have been Christmas time of '83 or early '84, you know, like wintertime. And that just, you know, as a little kid, that just changed everything for me. So I actually started getting the guys that were older than me in school, and, hey, check this out, Raven. Hey, check this out, Exciter, or whatever, you know, Merciful Fate. And I just, you know, I don't know. I started playing clubs at maybe 13 or something like that. And the guys were all like 5 years older than me and stuff, you know, that I was playing in. And a lot of these guys, you know, I introduced them to shit like Possessed and stuff like that. And they were older than me, you know. I was like, check this out, Possessed. How do you know all this shit, you know? You know, and yeah, so yeah, I was very young, you know. But it's funny because even some guys I know, like some of the Swedish guys I know that are around my age, like around 50 or something like that. It's kind of the same story. They started out like so young. Even you know, Nihilist, which became Entombed, you know, those guys were kids. You know, they were kids. You know, I think they're all my age, you know, and when they started out in the Swedish scene, it's just like nobody knew how young they were.
Right.
Death Angel, another band that way too. It's like I remember seeing them on their first tour, and the drummer was the same age as me. So we were getting a kick out of it. We were talking. Oh, I'm in a band, and I'm 14. I'm 14 too.
That's wild.
So yeah, it was. I kind of had to grow up quick, I guess, in a sense, and most of my friends were older than me. I didn't have many friends my age. So,
And the thing it's crazy too to think about, and I mean, did you realize at the time, especially being that young, like when you first were starting to record Goreaphobia stuff, doing the demos and that was happening, did you have a sense that, yeah, we're doing something really special here, we're doing something kind of revolutionary? Or was it just like, oh, this will be fun, let's do this? Did you have any sort of a sense of that you were actually kind of changing music in a way?
I knew that we were different, but there wasn't any kind of thing about, oh, you're going to be a part of this new thing or whatever. We had our influences. We just, we were just trying to create the band we wanted to hear. Me, and particularly me and Chris Gamble, who started the band together, was our vision, me and him. And, it's a lot of especially like in the thrash scene at that time, it was really getting watered down, and we wanted to do something darker, more extreme. And we were really into like Possessed, Bathory, Celtic Frost, stuff like that. And then I got into the tape trading scene. So I got a hold of the one Death demo, Infernal Death, which was Infernal Death, the song Archangel, and I think Baptized in Blood was on there. Cool. And I just like, what the hell is this, And same thing as like Paul Speckman, Death Strike, hearing the fucking Death demo, It was just like, I was hearing stuff in the underground that I wasn't hearing anymore from, the bands like Destruction and Creator that, or even Sepultura. I remember, because Morbid Visions was so over the top. I know kids nowadays are like, oh, it's out of tune and this and that, but it's not even about that. It's about the attitude, and the aggression in the music. So even like I remember Sepultura were like changing, and they were becoming more like a thrash band than a death metal band. And but at that time there wasn't that many bands really doing death metal. There was like in the States you had Morbid Angel, and you had Necrovore and stuff like that. But I don't. Speaking for me or Chris, from Goreaphobia and the Immolation guys or John McEntee, like it was the same thing. I don't think any of us thought we were going to be a part of some kind of musical movement or anything like that. But we were just trying to push things to the next level, and that's what I don't hear so much in the younger bands today. It's cool that a lot of the younger bands, they try to copy what we all did years ago, but I'd rather see, kids, because I had my influences, but I didn't want to sound like them,
Yeah.
And I'd rather hear kids just kind of like speak their own voice, do their own thing, and instead of just, copying what was done before. And that was the thing about us, like we weren't hearing it, like in the beginning of thrash, it was just so, the attitude, it was so extreme and over the top, and it just seemed to kind of get lost. And it happens to any kind of genre. Same thing happened to death metal. That's why the black metal thing opened up.
Right.
It started to kind of happen in the early 90s, because I think that was like a reaction, because death metal and black metal were kind of in the 80s like the same thing in a sense, it was, it's the brutality, the darkness, the atmosphere in the music. And death metal started to get watered down too, and it happened, and black metal even worse. I think it happened, but we were just trying to push forward, just trying to make music we wanted to hear. I don't think anybody had any ambitions to like, oh, we're going to go do albums and all this stuff. I mean, the biggest ambition was to get a demo and get it out into the fanzines and stuff. That was like, holy shit, I'm in a fanzine. Oh, I have a demo, it's just like, and then obviously things, you know, little by little things happen. You know, do records, you go out on tour, and you know, and I know even for Bob and Ross at Immolation, they it's the same thing for them. It's just like they never really, I don't think they thought, or John McEntee would think that, you know, 30 something years later, here we still are.
I would imagine your 14, 15-year-old self would be flabbergasted that, you know, 30 years ahead, like, whoa,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
touring the world.
Yeah. It's crazy. And it's just crazy to see these young kids, you know, like when you meet some of these young kids, they really do their homework, and they're like, you know, just see, like, they talk about certain demos of bands, and I'm just like, how the hell do you know this shit? You know, it's crazy, but it's super cool, man. You know, and even like the festivals, you just don't think like thousands. And like, I remember, you know, Carcass got back together, and I went to their first show they did, the reunion. It was in New York City, and it was sold out, 2,100 people.
Wow.
And I was just like, you know, I was there with a friend of mine from the band Mortician, and I was just like, you know, would you ever, you know, even think of something like this back in the day? Like, because, you know, for the most part, in our scenes, everybody was doing the kind of music they were doing. Same thing with the Swedish guys. I could tell you the same thing, is that we were like hated, you know, like even the thrash guys, they hated us. You know, they thought we were garbage, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just funny how far it's gotten to where you're playing these big festivals like a Hellfest when you got, you know, 100,000 people out there. It's just, it's insane, you know?
Yeah.
But I also think it's cool too, especially in Europe, where you have like a hard rock band and heavy metal band, death metal band, black metal band. I like that, how it's mixed up, you know, too, like that. But yeah, you just don't think, you know, all these years later, just how far things have gone.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it was, I mean, especially back then, it was for most people, they just didn't understand it, you know. Like I said, even the thrash guys, you know, they were just like, what is this, you know?
Yeah, especially, yeah, like you said, back, I mean, I remember going to shows, you know, back, you know, late 80s, early 90s, and yeah, there'd be like 12 people there. You know, I mean, there was nobody there.
Yeah.
Kind of despised, as you said. Yeah, it was, you know, people kind of horrified by the music, or at least, you know, even just the imagery. So
Yeah.
that's funny how it's changed. It's interesting you bring that up. I recently read a quote from, speaking of Possessed, you mentioned Possessed, Jeff Becerra, talking about death metal.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody was asking about it, and he said, like, and this was a recent quote, just a couple months ago, I think, and he said, you know, he thinks death metal is the most exciting music that's happening right now. So I was kind of curious, what do you think is the staying power of death metal?
I think it has its, you know, it's like a roller coaster ride, you know. It's just, it has its high points and it kind of dies down, but it doesn't go away, you know. It just, then it comes back up again. And like I said earlier, it's a lot to do with, I think, the younger generation. Because, for instance, there's even bands that I've toured with over the last couple of years that are, you know, I mean, in some cases, like 20-year difference in age, you know. And like, for instance, there's like Blood Incantation, there's Full Hell, and these are two younger bands that I've toured with, and they've become good buddies of mine. I could consider them really good friends, and I respect them so much. And it's just their musical taste, their knowledge, how they look at things. It's amazing, you know, and it's really gives me some hope, you know, because they're smart, man. They're smart. They have their own vision, you know, and they get it, you know. They get the attitude, they get the feeling in the music and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, that's it's inspiring, actually, to see that, you know. So yeah, I think there's just a younger generation, and I think the internet has a lot to do with it. Even though there's, you know, there's pros and cons to the internet, but
yeah,
you know, probably me and you were younger. You really had to go through a lot to get your music, to get the album and stuff like that. And you had to put a lot of work into it. Even the same thing when I got into the underground scene, tape trading, you you know, when you send away for a demo, you might not see that demo for like 2 months or something like that,
Right.
or that fanzine or whatever, you know, and, you know, nowadays everything is there, but also it's not like the MTV generation of like where the radio like kind of force feeds what you're going to hear, you know?
Yeah.
So nowadays kids can just find stuff so easily, you know, and, you know, there may be some kid that's into like the more commercial stuff, like a Slipknot or something, and he may hear, you know, a band like Immolation or something and say, I never heard it, because there's some kind of, you know, like I know the Slipknot guys are fans and stuff like that too. So they mention us and they check out, oh, Immolation, this is what I'm looking for, you know?
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. I'm sure the same thing for you. It's just like, you know, going through, you know, I grew up with rock music and having that kind of evolution from rock into hard rock and heavy metal and hardcore and punk and all that other stuff that, you know, into thrash. And, you know, it was a really cool journey, you know. And so I think the kids, it's easier for them, even though they're flooded with so much, because anybody can have a record out nowadays. You don't have to, you know, fight to get a record deal like you had to in the early days and really work at it. It's easy. Everybody's got a record label. Everybody's, you know, got their music out on YouTube or whatever. You know, there's pros and cons to that too, obviously. But, you know, I just think that it's easy. They have easier access. And like I said, they're not force fed. You know, what they have to listen to, you know, they can find everything, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good point. A really good point. Yeah, I think that was, yeah, as you said, it was kind of a bit of a, in some ways, you know, I look back somewhat fondly, you know, the hunt of trying to find something.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of this challenge of trying to find underground music.
Yeah, but it was exciting.
Also, yeah, and it could also be a pain in the ass. I mean, like you said, months. And you know, talking to people like, hey, and then finding out that, yeah, there's some album you want, it's going to cost you $50 just to get it shipped from England. And it's like, oh, shit. Yeah. Or now it's like, oh, click, here it is.
like a Venom record, like on Neat Records or whatever.
Yeah,
you know, like, you know, certain stuff that you had to like special order. Like I remember even, you know, when the death metal started to kind of, things started to happen, and Earache put out like, you know, the first Morbid Angel and Carcass records and stuff like that. And I remember going to the record store in Philadelphia. It was called 3rd Street Jazz and Rock. And that's where I used to get all my, as a kid in the 80s, like all hardcore and underground thrash and stuff like that. And I had, you know, I had to go there because Earache didn't have any US distribution, to kind of let the guy know when the record came out, and you order it, you know, and it would come into the store. And I think I got, you know, like Altars of Madness when it came out, and Autopsy, Severed Survival and stuff like that. And yeah, even like you're wearing a King Diamond shirt. I think I remember, like, I think I had to order like Don't Break the Oath or something like that, you know, like the record store, you know, to get it, you know, because it wasn't as easy access, especially, you know, being on an independent label. You know, you couldn't find certain stuff in some of the like bigger record stores or whatever, you know.
Right. Yeah, we were kind of lucky here in Utah, of all places. There's a tiny little shop in Salt Lake called the Heavy Metal Shop. Kevin started it up in '87, I think.
Right.
Only in heavy metal, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and he would get lots of cool underground, like, stuff you could not find anywhere else, you know.
Yeah. And it's amazing. It's just like hanging out at the record store. Like, I don't know if kids do that kind of shit, you know, just sitting there and hanging out and you, like, it was like a meeting place for other friends and musicians and stuff like that, you know, at the music store, you know, at the record store, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's the Heavy Metal Shop still exists. It's just Kevin now. It's just a tiny little joint, and
that's great though.
Yeah, it's cool that he's still going. I was wearing a Heavy Metal Shop. He made masks this past year, so I was wearing one of those in a grocery store, and this kid, I mean, he was in his probably early 20s, late teens, came up to me. And he worked in the store, and he said, "Hey, Heavy Metal Shop." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "Do you know Kevin?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And he goes, "I used to hang out there when I was a little kid because my dad loves that place." He goes, "I'd like hang out there all day long." I'm like, oh,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
meet somebody that kind of has a, he's young, but he's still.
I'm still
kinda
passionate about records too.
Oh,
Me and my wife listen to vinyl like all the time, So
yeah,
I'm a nerd with all that stuff,
Yeah, I love vinyl. I have way too much vinyl. It's ridiculous how much vinyl. In fact, I have. Well, this is how bad it's become with me with vinyl. I mean, there's stuff I want to own on vinyl, even though I already own it.
Right.
For instance, I just ordered one of yours. What is it? It's the Goreaphobia. It has the demos and some live stuff on it, I think.
Oh, is it a vinyl or is it a CD?
Yeah. Well, so I ordered it. I have it. I ordered it originally.
Vile Beast.
What's that?
Vile Beast. I think it's called Vile Beast of Abomination.
Yeah, it's that one. So I had it already, just digital. And I'm like, why do I own this on vinyl? So I'm actually waiting for it to. It might even show up today. I'm hoping it does.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
but I have that coming, and so I'm constantly ordering vinyl and going to record shops because there's a few around here. And
I still am. Like today, I was looking at stuff. I'm like, like there's like this David. My wife loves David Bowie, and I was just like, she loves this record. I think I got to order this for her, surprise her. She won't see this podcast, hopefully.
Yeah, I won't post this. Yeah, I'll keep it.
But then there's other stuff I'm seeing on there, like, I used to have that. I got to get that too, and it can get really bad, ugly. It's like the money. It's just like.
Oh yeah, and way too
much. The worst
much.
addiction is guitars. That's the worst.
Oh wow, I bet. Yeah,
there's never enough.
Right.
I'll see something. I'm like, I need that.
Speaking of guitars, speaking of your equipment, what do you use the same equipment on stage as you use in the studio? Do you use different guitars for different, say for instance, the different bands that you're working with? Or do you with one guitar?
Well, I use. I'm endorsed with ESP guitars, so that's I stand behind the company, and for me, it's just in my opinion, they're the best made guitars there is. And I have other brands too, obviously, but for the most part, it's a little bit different. Like for Immolation, I like to have the V guitar. Same thing with Bob and the live. It just feels more natural playing. But in the studio, I'll use depending on the project too, because if you want clean tones, you may want like a Strat kind of thing, and for certain clean sounds. And for the most part, I think I use as of lately the ESP Eclipses, which is like a Les Paul kind of shape of the guitar or whatever, and they just sound they play great, and they just have the tone out of those guitars. I mean, that's why people look Les Pauls too, is because the big tone out of those guitars. But yeah, I mean, amps I use. I mean, for Immolation we use PVs, but I use it in the studio like Marshall, or I have EVH too and stuff like that. And, yeah, I mean, it depends. It's like you just kind of, sometimes you'll be playing something and it's just you'll be playing an instrument that you're just kind of I don't know, kind of falling in love with for like that month or whatever, and then you're like, I'm going to record with this, and and I think having different guitars is a good thing, because I just feel that there's different songs in every instrument, and it makes you play differently too. The feel of a certain guitar, because I have some similar shapes, like even the ESPs, that the same style of guitar, but they all sound different and play different.
Right.
And so I'm like a nerd with that shit though. I'm like,
nice.
Like I just did a thing the other day with Eric Meyer from Dark Angel, and like before the interview we were just like nerding out about guitar shit, and he was like showing me all his stuff at his house, and
oh wow,
and it's just like nerd stuff. My wife walked by and she's like, "Oh, you guys are bad. You guys are nerds." It's just like it's like, well, I got this one with this type of wood, and da 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 da. It's just guitars I could talk about all day long, but for Immolation, it's ESP V shaped guitars that me and Bob use, and the PV Triple X heads that we use, and Ross uses Ibanez basses and Mesa Boogie, I think. So, but yeah, in the studio, it's just I like to experiment too. You know, I like to try some different heads and things like that. And you know, like I said, guitar, you could just fall in love with something right before recording, or you just switch up on some guitars, just go whatever sounds best with whatever combination you got at the time, and just go with that. You know,
Very
so
cool. Very cool. Well, I don't want to keep you all day, so I have one last question for you. So my, as you know, my blog, my page is Brews and Tunes. So I pair craft beer with mostly metal, hard rock, some other stuff here and there. But you know, you're hanging out at your house, crack open a beer, throw on some vinyl. What album do you put on? What beer do you crack open?
Well, I don't drink anymore, so I hate to
Okay.
disappoint you with that. My wife, though, my wife loves all kinds of like craft beers and stuff like that. So we know some guys that actually own a meadery by our place.
Oh, nice.
So my wife has recently got into the mead and stuff like that. So for me, when I did drink, I haven't drank in 19 years, you know. So it just kind of reached my my peak of drinking, my professional career of drinking, and you know, and I have a lot of funny memories, that's for sure. But yeah, I just don't drink anymore. But yeah, if I was to, you know, have a beer or whatever, I mean, I think the music that I enjoyed the most drinking was probably any Motorhead, any AC/DC, or Venom. It's just like that's my kind of drinking music. You know, but if I'm relaxing at home, it's, you know, it's probably like Pink Floyd and stuff like that, you know, King Crimson or Yes or whatever. Black Sabbath records, you know. 70s music is my favorite music, you know.
Oh, nice.
You know, so it's usually something like that, you know, or some old, you know, thrash like Destruction, Infernal Overkill or something. You know, I go back and forth, but I know when my wife's drinking, she likes, yeah, it's like David Bowie or Merciful Fate or something like that. You know?
Cool. Very cool. Very cool.
So I hate to disappoint all the drinkers out there.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me, Alex. This was a great pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really fun chatting with you. Best of luck with all three bands that you got going on right now. I'm really excited to hear the new material that's going to be coming out soon. It sounds like.
Yeah, you know, I could tell you a little bit about the new Immolation record that I can, in my opinion, is the music is darker than the last album. It's definitely a darker record, and you know, and I think there's some different twists and turns on this record compared to the last one. You know, everybody says, oh, you know, the new record's the best thing we ever did, you know, but at the moment, I think songwriting wise, now we haven't recorded the record yet, but this how the songs are. Yeah, I think it's some of the best material, Immolation material. So, you know, so hopefully everybody likes it.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. Hopefully it won't be too long.
Yeah,
it comes out. So great, very cool. Well, thank you, sir. It's
a
pleasure speaking with you. Yeah, really appreciate it. So,
cheers.
Cheers.